This animation will detail how to install MGF Walers and struts using a lowering frames method. This Waler installation method is generally used for utility repairs and installations. This method is used when it is not possible or practicable to push the trench sheets ahead of the dig level due to surfaces crossing, or where the vibration or noise associated with the push and dig method or pre-drive method is not acceptable. This method could also be used when assembling and installing Waler systems by hand within the trench. The Waler frame can be assembled as per existing MGF Safe System of Work guidance. Please refer to the MGF website or YouTube channel. If plant is not to be used for assembly and installation, then each of the Waler frames should be built up within the trench. The installation sequence remains the same. Ensure all pins and bolts are securely fitted and all lifting points have been inspected. If end-safe struts are required, then these should be installed within the Waler frame prior to lowering into the ground. Please refer to the existing MGF Safe System of Work guidance for end-safe struts. Installation should commence by digging to a maximum of 1 metre below ground level. Ensure the spoil is located at a suitable enough distance to not add an unnecessary surcharge. For a lowering frames installation method, it is recommended that the Waler frames be pumped out to roughly 100mm under the intended sheet-to-sheet width to give the sheets enough room to be lowered into position. This installation method requires 3 frames, and throughout the installation it is essential to maintain a minimum of 2 points of contact with the trench sheets. Generally, with this method, 2 Waler frames are initially installed into the trench. The third frame is installed after further excavation has taken place. Alternatively, if that is not practicable, all 3 frames can be lowered into the trench prior to further excavation. The first 2 frames should be lowered into the excavation on top of each other, separated by timber packers. Ensure a lifting plan has been produced for each lifting operation. To position the 2 frames at their intended levels, as specified by the design. Ensure that both frames are positioned square and plumb. Packing may be required between these 2 frames to ensure they are at the correct levels. The 4 corner sheets can now be lowered into position. The sheets should be pitched using a pitching shackle. The customer must be responsible for securing the sheets laterally, either by packing behind the sheet using hardwood timber or by physically holding the sheet. Both frames should now be pressurised so they evenly bear up against the trench sheets. The maximum recommended preload pressure of 1500 psi or 100 bar must not be exceeded. Safe access into the excavation should be provided for this operation. Prior to releasing the hydraulic hose, the lock-off valve on the struts must be closed and the pressure released in the bucket pump by turning the flow regulator switch to neutral. Restraining chains should now be connected between the top of the 4 trench sheets and the top Waler frame lifting points, as well as between the 2 frames. Ensure there is sufficient slack in the chains so these can be adjusted as the frame and sheet levels change. The remaining trench sheets should now be installed between the corner sheets. This force can be applied directly with the excavator bucket. It is recommended to utilise shorter sheets to enable safe access in and out of the excavation during the installation stages, as well as to create a digging window for the excavator bucket. These shorter sheets should be replaced with longer sheets as the excavation progresses. The trench sheets bearing up against the end-safe struts can be installed at the same time as the other sheets, or instead, the ends can be battered back, should there be enough space to do so, prior to installing the third Waler frame and the remaining trench sheets. Once all the main sheets are installed and the frames pressurised, then excavating can then continue until the next level as specified by design. Once this next level is reached, then the third frame should be installed within the trench. Once the final frame has been built up in the trench, then any remaining trench sheets can be installed. Prior to depressurising the middle frame, it is recommended to attach a 4-leg lifting chain. The Waler struts should be depressurised by reconnecting the hydraulic hoses, opening the lock-off valves and relieving the pressure in the struts. This may require manually compressing the struts. The second frame can now be repositioned by carefully lowering so it lies on top of the third frame. packed between the two frames so the second frame is at its next level as specified by the design. Prior to releasing the lifting chains, the frame must be repressurized at its new location. Restraining chains can now be installed. Excavating can now continue to the next level as specified by the design. The third frame can now be depressurized and lowered to the base of the excavation before being repressurized. All three frames are now at their final levels. Excavating can now continue, the sheets can now be pushed down to their final formation level. It is recommended to install shoring safety products as soon as practically possible.